One of my very favorite edgings is called the Judith Duffy Cabled Edging. It's one of those things that I wish I had invented, but I didn't. I featured it in the first book that I did, Hand Manipulated Stitches for Machine Knitters, and so a lot of people associate this trim with me, but it's really the work of an American knitter who lives in England named Judith Duffy. So I've turned the work over because the trim will look best with the knit side facing me. I've held all the needles except for the first three on the carriage side, and with the carriage set to hold needles in holding position, I've knitted 12 rows on just those three needles. Now I'm going to remove those three stitches, pass them under the first three needles, and then place those stitches onto the 4th, 5th, and 6th needles respectively. Then I'm going to push the next group of 3 needles just to upper work position. The open latches should be just in front of the sinker posts, and I'm going to knit 12 rows. The probably best thing to do is to use some finger tensioning here. And then I'll take these 3 stitches off, and I'll pass them under the next 3 needles and place them on again the 4th, 5th, and 6th needles from the edge. So what happens is these 3 needles here, the second group of 3, each hold 2 stitches. The yarn passes under the next 3 needles, which are going to be brought back to upper work position. And they in fact hold 2 sets of stitches also from the first time I did this. The yarn that's passing underneath is going to get hidden inside the spiral twist that forms around the edge, so you don't need to worry about it. If it didn't get lost inside there for some reason, maybe a yarn you're using, then I might manually knit those 3 needles back to eliminate the possibility of there being a float that could show. And then I'll knit 12 rows. Now, I'm saying 12 rows because that usually works when I'm working on 3 stitches. With a particular yarn and stitch size, it may be that you only need to knit 10 rows, or maybe you'd need to knit 14 rows. This is one of those things that I would always do a sample of first, and a good way to do it is to make sure that you do a sample right on the edge of your gauge swatch so that you check for everything right before you even begin. So again, pass the yarn under those 3 needles, bring the needles to upper work position, and knit 12 rows. And that's all there is to it, over and over. You're going to remove these 3 stitches on a transfer tool, pass the tool under 3 needles, and place those 3 stitches on the 4th, 5th, and 6th needles, then bring the next group of needles to upper work position. Okay, so there's the cabled twist. I hope you can see that clearly enough. And there's that float that hides on the inside. Really not visible, but as I said, you can knit it back. Now, I started by working on live stitches, but if I wanted to do this edging all the way around an afghan, for example, I could pick up the side edge, the selvage edge of the knitting, usually a whole stitch, and hang it right on the needles. And just as you would in picking up a side edge, you're probably going to pick up about 3 out of every 4 stitches so that you don't elongate or stretch the edge, so that it's more comparable to the stitch gauge than the row. So this is where I'm turning the corner. Now think about this. If it took 12 rows just to make the spiral, in order to also make the corner, I'm going to have to add a couple of extra rows. So this one is the second to last one on the top edge. I've knitted 12 rows. I'm actually going to do 2 extra, 14 rows, and then move those stitches over. I don't want the corner to flatten out as I'm working around. And same thing for the last group here. I'm going to do 14 rows. Weight back over here. And that will be enough just to keep the corner from being too flattened out and to keep a nice curve as the cable twists around. And then I'll just continue right along the side. Okay, I've worked my way around all 4 edges of this miniature afghan, as it were. And now I'm down to the very last 2 groups, and I want to make sure that I end this as quickly and as invisibly as possible. So on the second to last group, I've only knitted 6 rows. And now I'm going to reduce those 3 stitches down to a single stitch, put them on one needle and knit them through manually. And then I'm going to move this 1 new stitch to the leftmost needle of the last group. Knit 1 row across, and then reduce these 3 down to a single stitch, and knit it through.